the Matt Sager Podcast, Tuesday, October 2nd. Penultimate episode of Better Call Saul aired last night, which means we're nearing the end of my recaps. Kind of sad, kind of bittersweet. The season went by really quickly and has served as, among other things, a reminder that family, even those lost to us, can haunt us, strike back at us from beyond the grave. Say, for instance, if you were involved in some sort of, tax evasion scheme, something of that nature, and your brother was a attorney, or your father was a real estate mogul. Just tossing out random examples of things that could happen if you were to have had unfinished business with a loved one before they part. One of the many themes of last night's episode of Better Call Saul, titled Wiedersehen. And let me just be very upfront about this. Spoilers ahead. If you haven't watched the episode yet, I suggest you do that and then listen to this episode after. What I've been doing for the past several weeks, with one exception when Amazon Video failed to upload the video in time, has been to recap Better Call Saul the night after it airs. This is not, in general, a specifically TV-centric podcast, although I do love me some TV, just as I love movies, music, all the arts, really. But Better Call Saul, just as Breaking Bad did, has a very special place in my heart. I think it's just astonishing storytelling, amazing TV. I just have so much fun every Tuesday chopping up little sound bites to play on the Matt Sager Podcast. So if you've watched Wiedersehen, or don't plan to, let us plow ahead together, shall we? I'm really on the fence about Kim at this point. I know she is the voice of good, the voice of reason, the voice of compassion. She's also kind of a hypocrite. She runs very hot and cold, and as a result, I'm finding myself running very hot and cold with her. I will say this. Kim in general as a character and last night's episode of Better Call Saul are an example of what people mean when they say subverting expectations and they're referring to it as a good thing. You know, it's important to note that Rian Johnson, who many of us, myself included, have gleefully shat upon for The Last Jedi. Because he was like, oh, look at how I subverted everybody's storytelling. Remember how J.J. Abrams said that Rey was going to be the daughter of two big Force people, and turns out her parents were just alcoholics? Oh, yeah, sorry. Spoilers for Star Wars The Last Jedi, too. Anyway, I've subverted expectations. Yeah, but we've been here for 2.5 hours. I don't feel a sense of joy. I don't feel surprised. I don't feel anything. And it's really a shame because before Rian Johnson failed to subvert expectations in an enjoyable way, he directed maybe the best episode of Breaking Bad ever, Ozymandias. Remember that one? Yeah, that was Rian Johnson. He's come a long way. Now he's back to milking space animals with Luke on some godforsaken planet. Yeah, Last Jedi was just a hot mess. Whereas Kim and just about every character on last night's episode of Better Call Saul, Kim and I would say Werner being her bookend of subverting expectations the right way. So we open on Kim and Jimmy pulling off a great scam in the service of the giant investment bank that Kim works for. So she's having a blast. Remember, toward the end of the last episode of Better Call Saul, we thought she was going to be all dark and dreary and, oh my God, I can't believe we did that. And instead, she looks like she's just tasted cocaine for the first time. She goes, let's do it again. So we open on them doing it again. And from there, we cut to a diner where she's hanging out with Jimmy. They're both enjoying the fact that they got away with it. They're both having fun. And Jimmy's excited because, this whole season, his brother has passed. He's been suspended from practicing law for a year. And he's getting ready to go up and face the board, get ready to be reinstated. Because he's getting a little bit tired of selling burner phones on the street. And Kim's really gotten him through this, although admittedly there was a time when he thought the two of them were going to have an office together, and instead she left him for the law firm of Schweikart, so the writing is kind of on the wall with the two of them, but, there were glimmers of hope last episode. Certainly in the opening scenes of this episode. But Jimmy floats an idea to Kim, and her response is, I feel a couple things about it. On the one hand, I see where she's coming from. On the other hand, well, let me just play this for you. You decide for yourself.
People would pay top dollar for us to undo a potentially life-ruining sentence.
I think we should only use our powers for good.
What are we considering good as of 9:06 p.m. tonight?
You know what? It's like Potter Stewart said. We'll know it when we see it.
I kind of call BS on that. Potter Stewart, by the way, was a Supreme Court justice. You may be familiar with the process of appointing them. There's been a little bit of scuttlebutt about them of late. But in 1964, I think, he did a ruling about pornography. Specifically, I think he ruled in favor of a movie, saying it wasn't hardcore pornography, but I'm not really a legal expert. Turns out tons of what law school and practicing law is memorizing rote facts. And if it's not a television show or a glam rock or punk band, I'm terrible at that stuff. But if I remember right, he was talking about a movie that was being accused of just outrageous indecency. So indecent that it was going to be fined legally or have to pay some sort of financial debt to the state. And Potter Stewart said, regarding hardcore erotica or hardcore pornography, I don't have a definition, but I know it when I see it. So in other words, for Kim, using your powers for good when it's in service of this giant bank, Mesa Verde, is for good. Doing it in service of Huel is bad. Now, she may be right, but she's also self-serving. That's my take anyway. It's not impossible to be both kind of correct and kind of a hypocrite. I think that's kind of the line Kim is straddling at this point. But on the subject of straddling lines or being caught between, say, a rock and a hard place, the question about Nacho is who's going to kill him. Will it be Gus? Will it be Lalo? Will it be an unidentified member of the cast? Will it be Mike? I don't know, but Nacho's future, oh boy, I would bet on Bitcoin before I bet on Nacho. It's looking bad. So he's been joined now by another member of the Salamanca family, Lalo. Lalo comes to town, brings him over to the nursing home to help cheer up old Uncle Hector, and he gives him a lovely bell to ding. He then asks to meet with Gus, who, according to Nacho's telling of the events, stepped in and saved Hector when he was stroking out at the end of last season. And so he wants to broker peace, say thank you, maybe throw a little swagger around and just remind him the Salamancas are back in town. That's actually what I would guess. It's impossible to tell. The guy who plays Lalo is such a freaking great actor, as is Giancarlo Esposito as Gus, who's just spectacular. Watching these two together, just sizing each other up and second-guessing each other, is just absurdly fun. Let's see if it's as fun to listen to.
But it could have been worse. Varga tells me that while everybody else was picking their asses, you rushed to him, struck him on the chest, and brought him back.
It was a simple instinct.
But still, with all the history between you two, what you did was a gesture of peace. Or at least that's how we see it.
I'm very pleased to hear that.
He says that with a look that says, maybe I'm pleased, maybe I'm concerned, maybe I'm terrified, maybe I'm really pissed. Between the two of them, Nacho's outside. This is all taking place in the back room of Los Pollos Hermanos. And poor Nacho's sitting there in a booth going, oh, Christ, which one of these two guys is going to kill me? And so am I. I'm wondering what fate he's going to meet. I know it's going to be ugly and brutal. And both Lalo and Nacho, turns out, have a rich history in the Breaking Bad / Better Call Saul Gilligan-verse of television. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. But first, Jimmy is all gung-ho. He's ready to face the board. And boy, oh boy, has he done his homework. I truly believe he's either the best con artist in the world, or he really has come to love, respect, and care about the law and his clients. I would even venture to say it's possible that it's both. And like Kim, he too is straddling a line and doesn't know where he's going to end up. And this meeting foretells his future, and not necessarily for the best. But boy, does he have his act together. So when he walks into the meeting, he knows that they're going to doubt him, and he's prepared. He's done his homework. And he answers question after question after question with loads of research and case law and all the work he's done, the cases he's been following this past year, in which, yes, I have been relegated to working in a cell phone store. But as you can see, I've been elevated to the inner circle of their top bestsellers because of my people skills. But enough about that. I've been following Jones versus State of Nebraska and the way that the tort statutes intersect with the law of such and such. And admittedly, for victims to testify to their attackers, to face them in open court would be very difficult. But the road to justice is long and winding, and it's such an interesting process, and it's just a joy to witness for me. You know, he's really meditated on it, and it shows. That, or it's just the best act ever. So after this really eloquent show and this dazzling display, you'd be hard-pressed to come up with a reason why they would reject him after this fantastic meeting. But then one of the board members turns to another and says, do you have any questions for Mr. McGill before we let him go? And it turns out she has one.
Mr. McGill, what does the law mean to you?
The law.
So for a second here, we're seeing Saul, right? I mean, the law? What? The law? But listen to how quickly he rebounds and how very convincing he is. I believe him. And I really don't know whether we're talking to Jimmy or Saul or what's going on in his mind. But check this out.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, growing up, becoming a lawyer was the last thing on my mind.
So that's honesty. He veers from, what, the law? Uh-oh, you caught me with a question I wasn't prepared for. But then he gets very real. Talks about how he wasn't ready to be a lawyer, how embarrassing it was for him, what a failure he was, especially compared to people of higher stature, what poor learning skills he had, what a poor study he was, and how embarrassing it was that he ultimately got his degree from the University of American Samoa. Go land crabs. But then he keeps on talking, and by the end, my God, we've gone full To Kill a Mockingbird here. I am entranced.
Our legal system is complicated, and sometimes it could feel capricious, but it's the closest thing to real justice that we've got. And for it to work, it needs vigorous, passionate advocates. Helping my clients, arguing on their behalf, that's the best thing I've ever done. And this past year, I've missed the hell out of it.
Now, I believe that to be 100% true. Whether or not there were secondary, tertiary thoughts going on in his mind, I certainly believe that to be true as well. But I think he means it when he says helping out those seniors. If you've been following this show, you know that he's either just a sociopath or he loves these people dearly and they've given his life real meaning and he's been suffering without the ability to champion for them.
Was there any particular influence on your views?
So after this dazzling display and this proof that he loves the law, knows the law, and should be in a courtroom practicing it, here's where Jimmy shoots himself in the foot. It's like, oh, Jimmy, what are you doing? Because they do have one more question for him.
Was there any particular influence on your views?
Credit where credit is due. The University of American Samoa. Go land crabs.
Anything else?
No. Thank you.
I think we have everything we need.
Ah, Jimmy. So, of course, he sits outside waiting for their response. Something about the way they dismiss him is so dismissive. He knows something's wrong, and he doesn't quite know what, which is amazing, because everybody watching knows. But this is his Achilles heel. This is why he's stuck between being Jimmy and being Saul. So he demands an answer for why he's been rejected.
It was a question of sincerity.
What?
Some members of the committee found you somewhat insincere. You're free to apply again next year.
You see, there was a missing word from that answer about influence. That word was Chuck, his brother, who of course was his influence, who saved him time and time and time again, who told him he never mattered to him shortly before killing himself. Sorry, I did say spoiler alert, but moving on. Mike has been doing some charming bonding and also terrifying overseeing of this crew of Germans who are building Gus's super lab. Particularly the foreman, Werner, and him have really bonded. He took the guys out for R&R. Admittedly, Mike really despises this one guy, Kai, who is sort of Werner's number two. And that bodes poorly, especially if you think about Mike and the way he interacted with Walter and Jesse. It's a cute little sort of recreation of that dynamic, but one with, I think, a more grim outcome, if you can even imagine such a thing, for the people Mike's dealing with in this case. So Mike is celebrating. They've made huge strides, and again, subverting major expectations, because it looks for a second as though Werner's going to die in an explosion. But instead, they've made a breakthrough, the lab has made huge progress, and they're all celebrating, except Werner looks pretty bummed out, and Mike is concerned.
Michael, you were married?
I was.
How long?
22 years.
Perhaps you will understand. 26 in April.
Congratulations.
Mm-hmm. My wife. Without her, I am
adrift.
Yeah, adrift without her.
Yeah, so Mike's very concerned, but fortunately he's got a crew of men watching these Germans around the clock in this little Potemkin village he's built for them. And it actually is kind of nice in a creepy, weird, always being watched by scary mercenaries kind of way. I mean, they do have all kinds of dry goods. There's this whole outpost that looks like the back room of the nicest 7-Eleven or Wawa you've ever seen. And they've all got these lovely little houses that somehow exist within the framework of the lab that they're building. It's like the weirdest combination of suburban paradise and just total cartel Hades. Everybody is straddling some kind of line. The themes are becoming very clear to me. But of course, this show is called Better Call Saul, and even though he's not yet Saul, we are focusing on Jimmy, and of course, more and more we're focusing on his relationship with Kim as it continues to unravel along with every bit of good that makes up Jimmy. So he's furious. Insincere? Are you kidding me? That was as sincere as we've ever seen Jimmy, and now he has lost it.
What did they say when you talked about Chuck?
What does Chuck have to do with this? What?
Well, so you didn't even...
Why would I?
Yeah, see, she wasn't there right before the end when Chuck looked Jimmy in the eyes and said, "You never mattered to me that much." And that just destroyed Jimmy. Really set him down this path, which I'll grant you, he has sort of been on since birth, and that was kind of Chuck's whole beef with him. And the two of them just were so toxic to one another. Jimmy did terrible things to Chuck's psyche, and Chuck ultimately got his revenge, and he's still getting his revenge.
Yeah, I don't think about Chuck, okay? I don't miss Chuck. Chuck was alive, and now he's dead, and that's that. Finito. Life goes on, so sue me.
Wow, nice little tagline there, so sue me. A little bit of legal humor there.
You don't believe me?
Of course I do.
Jesus, it's right there on your face. You think I'm some kind of lowlife, some kind of asshole.
What?
Kind of lawyer guilty people hire, right?
Oh, Jimmy, that's
You
not...
look at me and you see Slippin' Jimmy.
I never said that.
Yeah, but you thought it.
Oof. So again, she was not there when Chuck looked Jimmy in the eyes and said, "You never mattered to me that much," shortly before ending his life, and never resolving things, leaving Jimmy, much like Werner, adrift. But here's where Kim sticks the knife in a little bit deeper and twists it.
Oh,
Maybe next time you call, I won't come.
there you go. Kick a man when he's down.
Jimmy, you are always down.
That's true, but it's brutal. And speaking of brutal, back to Mike. As I mentioned, he's been watching Werner, the rest of the German crew as they do their construction, and especially in their off hours. That's what he's really concerned about. With Werner missing his wife so much, he's arranged for him to have a long phone call with her, because Lord knows the lab ain't anywhere near done, and they're not going home until the job's complete. Werner even floated the idea to Mike that maybe he would take a real quick vacation back to Germany and leave Kai in charge while he was gone. And I can't imagine he was thinking that Mike would say, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Sounds great to me. Kai and I have been hitting it off great." But whatever he was thinking, he's got something else going on. Because again, Mike has been keeping an eye on Werner, Werner's crew. He's got this whole crew in a surveillance van with cameras set up all around the little fake village, watching them. But he notices something. And this is where it all falls apart.
What's going on with 6? Huh? There. What is that?
Oh, yeah. Dead pixels.
Wasn't there yesterday.
A voltage spike earlier. Camera flared for about 20 seconds, but came right back.
A voltage spike?
Yeah, remember that warehouse storeroom I was telling you about a few minutes ago? Where they've got 1 million packs of Doritos, all kinds of cleaning supplies, snacks, beverages. It's just the coolest all-night bodega, and it's theirs for the taking. All they have to do is be indentured servants to Mike and Gus in the cartel. Boy, lucky them. So surprise, surprise, the Germans made a jailbreak. Through that very warehouse, with a combination of skill and subterfuge, they took a laser and blasted through the lock and made their escape after first, talk about subverting expectations. I believe that they set this up, or at least a major component of their plan was put into operation earlier in the episode when it looked like Werner was going to die. What was really happening was he was laying the groundwork for this massive escape plan. And I believe, this is all conjecture, but I believe that that entire phone call with his wife was keywords, saying things like, "Oh, the dog keeps pissing on the rug," was like, "I'm leaving at 12:15. And "Oh, I love you, I miss you," was code for "We leave at dawn." Something to that effect. So next week, it all comes tumbling down. It's the season finale, and the bell will toll, literally. Again, Hector finally has his trademark bell given to him by Lalo, and I would not want to be Werner, Nacho. I'm still quite concerned for the fate of Kim. I know I said that I'm a little bit ticked off at her, and I am. You know what? I'm going to say something more truthful and also more hurtful. I'm not angry with Kim. I'm disappointed in her. There you go. But I do want to say one more thing about both Lalo and Nacho that bodes quite poorly for Nacho and suggests that Lalo is dangerous as hell, just as I've been suspecting. This is from Breaking Bad Season 2, Episode 8, an episode titled Better Call Saul. This was after Badger had been arrested by the DEA, and Walter and Jesse had gone to Saul and said, listen, you've got to represent him. And he'd said, sure, but I'll do such and such with the DEA. And they'd said, no, you cannot talk to the DEA because my brother-in-law, they don't say this, but Walt's brother-in-law is Hank ASAC Schrader. And so they try to convince him, they try to bribe him, he doesn't take their money. And so later that day, as Saul's closing up shop, they kidnap him and take him out into the desert. They're both wearing ski masks, and Saul is convinced he's going to die. And listen to what he says. Again, last night's episode of Better Call Saul takes place in 2004. This episode of Breaking Bad takes place in 2008. And listen to what Saul says.
Siempre soy amigo soy amigo del cartel. Shut up! I just speak English. Lalo didn't send you? No, Lalo?
Lalo didn't send you? Oh yeah, it's gonna get really hot. I can't wait for my final recap. Though I'm gonna really miss Better Call Saul. Of course, there's lots of great TV and other forms of entertainment to keep me busy for the next year, but goddamn do I love this show. Anyway, back to regular Matt Sager podcast tomorrow. In the meantime, contact me. Email matt@mattsager.com. Call 646-535-4788. On Twitter, I'm @MattSager. On Instagram, I'm Real Matt Sager. Facebook, The Matt Sager. I've also got a voiceover page there, Matt Sager VO. And this podcast has a page called Matt Sager Podcast. And for more of those social media links, along with episodes of this podcast, articles, blog posts, my voiceover reels, contact info, and much more, head on over to mattsagervoiceover.com.